Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show. I am your host, Dr. Will. I am here. It's raining outside. I have planned to grill, but my wife told me, you can't grill. It's going to be a thunderstorm outside. Uh, and I had a great day. So some training, Chromebooks, just my day to day. I am here today with Monica Burns, and we will be talking FormativeTech. Monica, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being a guest on the show. What Monica does not know was I was an ISTE captain, and I reviewed a submission of hers to ISTE.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. Which, woo, that was a lot of sessions to go over. But I survived. So for those who are watching the show, Monica, will you please introduce yourself?
Definitely. I'm a former New York City public school teacher. My last 2 years in the classroom were in a one-to-one iPad setting. I've been out of the classroom for a couple years, doing some writing on my blog, classtechtips.com, for Edutopia. For my new book coming out in just a few weeks on formative assessment and technology. And of course, traveling and bouncing around to lots of different places, working with teachers and spending a lot of time in schools.
Excellent. So I want to jump into this by asking you, because one of the things that really racks my brain in working with teachers in our one-to-one classrooms is why teachers would hold on so to paper and pencil when we know that technology, aside from modification and redefinition and those things with the summer model, but it really helps with formative assessment because you get that data back immediately and are able to make changes with instruction. So for those teachers who are watching, and maybe some are, they're hip to the game, and some of those who are just really like, okay, tell me something. I want to know. Sort of what have been your experiences with using technology for formative assessment, and how does technology actually change assessment?
Well, I'm so glad, Dr. Well, that you mentioned about that initial struggle, right? To move and shift from, a paper full classroom to a paperless classroom. And I think it's really all about finding that balance in the middle. And as you mentioned, right, with technology tools, we can do things in a more efficient, more organized manner, a more meaningful manner, and really hear from everyone in our class. So one of my favorite kind of stepping stone, if you will, tools introduced to teachers who are starting to think about making that shift is Seesaw, because you can really have students still working in that paper and pencil zone, but then as soon as they grab their tablet or their Chromebook, they can snap a picture and they can start talking about their work. And I think for teachers who are making that shift to say, everyday activities, but want to build in formative assessment with technology tools, using a tool like that, lets them hear all the voices in their classroom, right? Not the students who would say, I need help, or the students who don't raise their hand on the rug, but hearing from children of all ages, using some tools that really increase communication between students and teachers, make sure that we're checking in and hearing all those voices is huge.
Okay, so earlier you mentioned in the introduction about your book.
Mhm.
Can you tell us more about your book and what was the pain point behind you writing the book?
Yep. So my book, Formative Tech, Meaningful, Sustainable, and Scalable Formative Assessment with Technology, is really all about demonstrating a range of ways to use technology to increase formative assessment and the way that we check for understanding in a more effective and efficient manner. And my goal, having spent time in a one-to-one classroom and thinking about the ways that the devices in my students' hands were, how could I utilize them to the fullest potential? And then spending so much time in schools, coaching, working with teachers, speaking to educators at the district level, really thinking about how we can use the tools that we increasingly have, whether it's a mix of them or just one or a couple, to really check in to see where students are growing and where they need extra support. And so for me, my goal with this book was to use tomorrow tips, to give some big ideas for thinking about larger scale implementation. So whether you're a classroom teacher reader, a tech coach reader, instructional support staff, or at an admin level, you can start to envision how, just with a one quick fix, you can make a change that lets you hear the voices of all your students. But then with more thoughtful planning, you can start developing systems that will help you organize that information, choose and form groups, create tiered and level tasks for students. And so I think with any of these things that we introduce new ideas, we want to make sure it feels actionable. And that's always my key word when I visit schools and work with teachers, not just that we get a little hands-on time to try things out, but that we really make a plan for what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, this month, and be able to commit to some changes that might feel really big for one person and smaller for someone else.
Cool. Now, usually when teachers start out with technology, they're using Kahoot, they're using Nearpod, Edpuzzle, Google Forms for assessment.
Yeah.
How can teachers move from that assessment to more inquiry-based assessment, or assessment that involves students producing and creating?
That's such a great and insightful question, Dr. Well, and I'm so glad that you brought in the creation piece, because I think sometimes when we think about formative assessment, it's just about quizzes and multiple choice questions and looking at answers faster, which on some level is nice, but is not really what we're going for in terms of the end game, right? So if we can get students creating products that give us a window into their thinking and is shareable with an audience, not only do we set a purpose for them, but we become very purposeful in our planning and making sure that we are listening in. And I was really, I feel so lucky to have a fellow Apple Distinguished Educator, Rashawn Richards, write the foreword for my book. Rashawn is, one of the brains behind Explain Everything, the really powerful iPad and Chromebook friendly screencasting tool. And so, one of the reasons, I am just so excited about that particular tool is because it falls into a kind of a category I use all the time, which is tasks before apps. Like, what is our purpose? What is our learning objective? What is the success criteria that we're trying to, keep our eyes out for when we're on these formative assessment, fact-finding missions? And a tool like Explain Everything is a great example of one where you might have a first grader in a science inquiry snapping pictures and recording their voice, where you might have high school students creating persuasive call to actions for a global audience to post on social media, all the while being able to take students through a process where you're peeking in, you're giving feedback, and you're supporting them in ways that are more meaningful than giving them a number on an assignment, and really something that becomes actionable and relevant for them.
So you mentioned Explain Everything. One of my teachers, Mr. Jackson, who won District Teacher of the Year, he uses Explain Everything as well. And then one day he asked me, "Hey, can I pop that into Edpuzzle with my students?" And then, with Edpuzzle, you can embed those quizzes in there. And I was like, "Yeah, let me show you." And it was great for his students because they got the instruction in the way that he delivers it. They hear his voice, and he knows if they're getting it immediately by them, answering those questions.
Yeah.
So we talked about that. We talked about the initial movement. We talked about the inquiry base. How do teachers, I guess, keep fresh? And what I mean by that is there are tools out there that we learned, we're grown accustomed to, and teachers are creatures of habit anyway. And you just start to go, all right, Kahoot week, Kahoot day.
Mm-hmm.
They get so sort of in routine of using these tools that I don't want to say they lose their students, but the classroom may lose the excitement, the newness of it.
Mm-hmm.
How can teachers bring in different tools for assessment or keep themselves abreast of what's going on and make their lessons continually becoming more, dynamic?
And I think one thing that, I always come back to when you're talking about that type of student engagement, right? And making sure things feel fresh and not, stale and the way that we've been doing things all the time, right? One thing that I love to think about is some of the transferable skills we want students to be able to develop. What are they going to take into relevant outside of the classroom, those real world experiences, and infusing some other skills into that formative assessment routine, whether it's something like a back channel where you're supporting digital citizenship skills, bringing in discussion threads where you are reinforcing some of the expectations for commenting that you want students to transfer to someplace else, can be something to think about when you're trying to be strategic about bringing in new tools. And when it comes to finding new things, I'm a huge fan of Twitter. I'm coming up now in May on 5 years of blogging at Class Tech Tips, and being on that space as an educator. And I cannot tell you how much I learn on an everyday basis, not just because I'm reading tweets or articles, but because I'm seeing what people are excited about. I'm understanding where some of that passion is. And even just this past weekend, I had the chance to host Sat Chat, and being able to feel that buzz and energy not just helped me gather ideas and think about things to bring back to the educators I work with, but I know it really was getting everyone's wheels spinning in terms of what can happen in a timely manner back in classrooms. So when it comes to making those connections, finding those support networks, I think it can make it feel better when we kind of have that pang of needing to energize and try something a little bit new, in addition to making things feel really relevant for students and connected to their everyday lives.
So before I go, I want to talk to you or ask you about using tech for assessment that changes the culture with not only the classroom, but within a school.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's not just an individual teacher sort of using this technology, but the culture itself is predicated upon, let's really change things up. And as you mentioned earlier, these real world skills, what do we want kids to learn?
Mm-hmm.
How can technology be used, or how does a school sort of scale that assessment in a way in which it does begin to change the culture in the school?
And scalable is exactly something that I focus in on the book, and because we want to make sure that it's not just these great pockets, but it's a widespread change. And of course, that comes from leadership making technology integration, professional development, support networks a priority, all right, and placing that at the forefront of what they're looking to accomplish over the course of a school year, but really establishing a safe space for teachers to try something, and maybe it goes wonderfully or maybe it does not go wonderfully, and they know they can ask for support and help. I think that's a really important part of setting up your culture in a school for success, is letting teachers not only have the space to explore without feeling like there's something hanging over their head the whole time, but also providing opportunities for reflection, having teacher partnerships so that they can try out things in tandem and see how it feels in different environments, and really giving some flexibility. So you may say, and I know I've worked with schools who've tried this before, where two teachers on a grade level are piloting one tool, another set of teachers on the same grade level are trying something new. It's not a mandate, right? They've gone out together as a grade level team, found a couple options, realized what seems best for their teaching style, yet their goals are really the same. They want to provide these specific opportunities for students, and they're trying to find the way that fits best with the way that they run their classroom. And so giving teachers some autonomy with bringing in tools, with having open conversations and reflection, can still make sure that everyone's on the same page, even if they're going about it in a way that just elevates, their own voice and choice.
Awesome. Awesome. So my last question for you is schools, the one-to-one craze is everywhere and they're popping up all the time. I actually lead a couple one-to-one in a couple of schools in my district as well. Once these devices come in, where do teachers start? What is your call to action for schools to just begin the process of taking what they normally used to do on paper to the next level within the digital space?
I think that the first place to start is really to look at your curriculum goals, because those aren't going to change in terms of what your big overarching goals are. And when you look at that curriculum map for the school year and you dive into different places and you say, is this a great space for me to layer on some of my 21st century skills? Am I going to bring collaboration and creation into this unit? So if your curriculum map can be your anchor, you can use that to funnel in different opportunities, both small and large, for technology integration. So if you know that you have that fourth grade ecosystem persuasive writing unit coming up down the pipeline, right, you can make some decisions on how you're going to use some mind maps instead of your traditional graphic organizers to let students interact with a variety of media, right? Instead of writing that report, they're going to create a Spark video that takes that same preparation, the same content deep dive, and create something that then becomes very shareable to give them a larger audience. So using what you have, right, your curriculum map as a baseline can be a great place to start if you're ready to jump in right away, as opposed to feeling like everything needs to be overhauled at the get-go. Doing something like that when you're first diving in will give you a lot of information as to what's working and what you want to layer in to be more effective.
Awesome. Awesome. So Monica, will you please tell the viewers and the people who will be listening to this on SoundCloud as well, where they can find your book?
Yeah, so my book is available for pre-order now on Amazon, as well as Corwin Press's website, March 9th through 23rd. So I haven't announced it officially yet, but it's coming in just a few days. I'm doing a really special pre-order bonus where you can actually get an audio version of the first chapter to dive into before it ships out. So I'm announcing that at classtechtips.com/pre-order on the 9th. And then it'll be shipping out at the end of the month. And I'm just really excited to get on the road. I'll be in Barcelona speaking at a conference. I'll be in Anaheim for ASCD before the month is finished. And then to some of the spring conferences, including ISTE, as you mentioned as well, sharing what I'm really excited about with making assessment feel more joyful for students and more efficient and actionable for teachers.
Awesome. Thank you again, Monica, for being a guest on the show. As always, people, you are going to be able to check this out on my YouTube channel, on my blog, SoundCloud, and LinkedIn. Until next time, invest in you, EDU, peace.